war has come to the wild. Rumors say that months ago, a clandestine group of powerful animals conspired in a secret underground bunker to find a way to conquer the cycle of the seasons. There, they worked to fuse formidable technologies and perilous magic to develop a new source of endless warmth and power. Now the machines are rampaging across the Commonwood, intent on exploiting the warmth of the world and enclosing every habitat, town, and village in their path. Still, there are whispers of hope. Across the marshes, plains, mountains, and forests, scrappy crews of animals are rising up to resist the machines' occupation, fighting back with guerrilla tactics and clandestine sabotage. Can the defenders band together to heal the land and outsmart a seemingly impossible enemy? Or will the Commonwealth succumb to an endless industrial winter? It's up to you and your comrades to decide. Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm doing a sponsored tutorial for Defenders of the Wild, a new cooperative game for 1 to 4 players currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. Check out the link in the description below for more information. Please keep in mind that Outlandish Games paid me to make this video. I've also done a full solo playthrough of their previous game, Block by Block Uprising, but I was not paid or compensated in any way for that video. In Defenders of the Wild, players will take the role of an organizer for one of 4 different animal factions. The Order with its Wisdom of the Flame, the Council with its Fortitude and Bread, the Sect with its ingenious inventions, and the Coven with its spells and subterfuge. These animals must put aside long-standing factional disagreements in order to join forces in this war against the rampaging machines. Now I've gone ahead and I've got everything set up for a 2-player game. This is a prototype of the game, so the final copy might have changes. Check out their Kickstarter page for more information. Again, the link is in the description. But I've gone ahead and I've randomized the board. Each time you play, you'll place these tiles in a different configuration, so you have a different map every time you play the game. Little marks on the corners of some of the tiles show which begin with pollution markers and which have mechs. For this tutorial, I set up the Order and the Coven. I then chose starting locations for each that is in their preferred habitat and on the edge of the board. And I placed a camp and an organizer pawn in that space. I did the same thing for each faction not in play, but only placed their camps. I then shuffled up the machine deck of 6 cards and placed the machine direction pawn on the right arrow. I have the 6 factory tiles in the middle of the board, here in the core, and I've shuffled up the direction that they're facing. And then I've placed a wall and an engine going out from the arrow. And then I've placed just an engine on the opposite side. I randomly selected a first player, and then lastly, each player draws a hand of 3 cards. If you're playing solo, you would set up the game exactly the same way, except you would draw 1 hand of 3 cards, and you can use any combinations of the 2 decks. But there we go, that is setup complete. Over the course of this game, these engines are going to be building walls surrounding these hexes, and then building factories on top of those spaces. In order to win the game, we must do 2 things. 1, we must take over and destroy any factories that they build. We must also build all of our camps. If we can do both of those things before the robots have built their 7th factory, then we'll win the game. But if they try to build their 7th factory, we instantly lose. In addition, these factories are going to be spewing out pollution, and if there's ever 3 or more pollution on one of these hexes, they turn into a toxic site. And if they were ever to need to put out a 7th toxic site, that's another way we can lose the game. These mechs are also going to be spewing out across the board, and they can attack our organizers, dealing us damage, killing our defenders, and if too many of our defenders die, that's another way we can lose. So there's a lot of ways we can lose, and only one way that we can win, and it really involves putting out these camps. And in order to do that, we need to generate support. I'm going to show you how all of that works over the course of this tutorial. Now, the first thing that the players do in each round is they pick one of the cards from their hand in secret. And during this phase, players cannot communicate with each other. They cannot say what's in their hand or what card they're about to play. So each will simultaneously pick a card and play it face down on their exhaust pile to the right of their player board. Once all the players have picked a card, they can then reveal. And at this point, the players may discuss plans and how they want to proceed with the round. So you can't talk about what card you're going to play, but once the cards have been played, you can discuss how best to utilize them. And really, this simulates the fact that these factions don't trust each other. This is an uneasy alliance, and so there isn't going to be perfect communication. Now let's take a look at one of these defender cards. That top left symbol is showing which habitat is the home habitat for this particular defender. We have 4 habitats: forests, plains, marshes, and mountains. And each defender card has a home habitat. Below that shows which faction that this defender card belongs to. Then at the bottom left of the card, you have a number which represents how many action points you're going to get from playing this card. And then every card has a special ability. Some defenders have special abilities that say reveal on them. And those are special abilities that would be resolved right now. And as you can see, the Coven player played a card, the Coven Comrade, and their special ability is to take the first player marker. And so that happens right now. The Order player also played a card with a reveal ability. It says that all factions gain the map item. There are 4 different items: bread, maps, potions, and rockets. Each one is associated with a different faction, and each one gives you a little special ability, which I'll discuss here in a little bit. We now get to the action phase, the meat of the game, where we get to take actions equal to whatever number is shown on the defender card that we played. We have 8 actions that we can choose from, and we can do them as many times as we want and in any order that we want. There's a wonderful little player aid that lists them all. I'll go over these in detail, but we're going to be able to move, build camps, heal, regroup, clear pollution, destroy mechs, breach walls, and rewild factories. Now the Coven player is first, and their defender is going to give them 4 actions. I think the very first thing they want to do is move. Here is their organizer pawn, and when you take a move action, you can always just move to an adjacent hex. So you could just move to any adjacent hex if you want. But you can potentially move further depending on the home habitat of your defender card. The home habitat for our traveling bard are these marsh spaces. So anytime we're starting in a marsh space and moving to a marsh space, we can basically just keep moving. So for one move action, I can move all the way to here, because I've basically just moved through the marsh and then into those forests. Likewise, I could move over to here and stop, or I could even move through here and then go up to there. I can do all of that for one move. And likewise, if I'm starting here, for a single move action, I could come here and then move over into there, or I could even move here and then keep moving all the way to there. Keep in mind that you're not able to move through these engines, so I couldn't move from there to there. You also can't cross walls unless they're breached. You'll see that a little bit later. And you also cannot move into or through this central core tile. So for our first action, we're going to move. We're going to go there, keep going, and end up there in the forest. That's one action, and we have 3 more left. For my second action, I'm going to do a clear pollution, because we have a pollution token right there. This action is very simple. You just take all the pollution that's on that particular hex and discard it. And regardless of how much you remove, you get 1 support. Now you're going to see that these factories are going to start spewing out pollution. And anytime there's 3 or more pollution on a hex, we put out one of these toxic sites. Now those things are super bad. If too many of them appear on the board, we can lose the game. But with this action, with this clear pollution action, we're able to remove these toxic sites as well. Now, gaining support is incredibly important because we need support in order to build our camps. And that's how we're going to win the game. So with that in mind, I think for my third action, I want to do another move. And just as I said, I'm going to move on to here, and I can keep going because we're just going through the marsh. And because this is their home terrain, they know their way around. And so we can move very efficiently through marshes. And then for my final action, I'm going to do another clear pollution. Get rid of that and get another support. Once my support token is adjacent to my camp token, then I have enough support to build that camp. So I'm not quite there yet, but we're getting there. Now there's a couple of things I didn't mention about the move action. First, if you start your move somewhere where there's a mech, let's say from there, then after you move, that mech is going to get to take a melee attack on you. For that, you're simply going to roll the attack die here, and you may take no damage, 1 damage, or 2 damage. When you take damage, you just put a damage token here on your board. You can see you have 3 spaces. If you ever take a 4th damage, then one of your defenders dies. You would just take a random card from your hand and you would place it under these tokens here based on what their home habitat is. Losing defenders is really bad because if you ever lose 2 defenders from the same home habitat, you immediately lose the game. So you definitely want to be careful about taking damage. There is an action that you can use to heal all the damage that you have on you. Now, if you start your movement adjacent to any of these mechs that are on top of factory tiles, those are considered snipers and they can hit you from adjacent tiles. So if you were to start your movement adjacent to one of them and then move, they would take a shot at you just one time, and only this side of the die would count as a hit. This is just the melee side, so at worst you could only take 1 wound. The same thing is true if you take a clear pollution action and there's a mech in your space, then that mech will also take a shot at you. But we managed to avoid all that, and so there we go. I think the Coven player's turn is over. Now, after a player is done taking their actions, the machines get to take an action. And to do that, it's very simple. You just draw the top card from their deck, and you resolve it in order. So in this case, we got the pollution card. Here it says that players on or adjacent to toxic sites take 1 damage. There we go. That's another reason to control those toxic sites, is because if you're adjacent to one and this card comes up, you'll take some damage. Luckily, we haven't had any of that happen yet. The second thing it says is that factories spread pollution. So right now at the beginning of the game, we only have this 1 factory, but over the course of the game, these are going to start getting built out, and so pollution's going to be spreading like crazy. If you look at the tile, you can see here there are these 3 little smokestacks. And each of those is going to belch out some pollution to the adjacent hexes. So we got 1 here, 1 there, and 1 there. And there we go. It's that simple. That's the machine turn. Now the order player gets to take their actions. Their defender is only giving them 2, it looks like. I think the first thing they want to do is move, and as you can see, their defender's home habitat is the forest. So they could move all the way through here if they wanted, come to here. They have a lot of different ways that they can move. I think, though, they just want to move adjacent to that spot right there. And then for their second action, they want to destroy a mech. When you destroy a mech, you simply discard 1 mech that's on that hex. You gain a support, because the people love it when you're removing mechs. But those mechs don't go down without a fight, and so you have to roll for damage. Oh no, and we took 2 damage. Yikes, that is unfortunate. Now that was their 2 actions, and I could end things right here, but instead, I think what I want to do is spend their map token. Using items is not an action, and what the map lets you do is to relocate your organizer to a different hex that is the same habitat. So we can basically teleport to any other forest location, and I want to jump all the way over to here. And then we're still not done because there's something I haven't talked about yet, which is teaming up. So after you've used your actions, you can then spend additional cards from your hand that are the same home habitat as the defender that you played. So because this card is also a forest home habitat, we can discard this to take an extra action. You simply tuck it under the card that you played, and we can take one more action. And I want to take a move action down to here. When you end your movement on one of these camp spaces, you get an item that is associated with that particular faction. So with the Coven, you get the potion item. And I think they're just going to drink that potion right away as a free action. That potion lets you remove all damage from off your board. There we go. They're completely healed up. That's the end of the order player's turn, so the machines get to go. Just draw a card, and we got the engines card. So the first thing that we would do is if any of the habitats were fully enclosed by walls, then we would build a factory. Right now, we don't have any fully enclosed habitats. Keep in mind that the sides of this central core are considered to be walls, and the boundary of the map is considered to be just like a wall as well. So some of these corner pieces can be enclosed with just 3 walls around them. But right now we don't have to worry about that, so we can move on to number 2, engines, advance, and build 2 walls. So each of our engines are going to be on the move, and as you can see, they move between these hexes, and every time they have a choice of either going to the left or to the right. And this shows you which way they're going to go. So right now, the marker is on the right movement, so they're going to move to the right. So we go 1, 2. And then for each of those spaces, they get a wall. Just like that. And this one's going to go 1, 2. So you can see they're kind of moving around the hex, trying to enclose it with walls so that the next time this card comes up, they can build a factory. Now, if one of these engines were to ever need to move and kind of hit a wall, like for instance right here, if it were to need to move and it would just sort of bump up against someplace where it couldn't move, instead it will reset. You'll just place it here back onto the central core. And then here in step 3, where it says deploy reset engines, at this point you would then redeploy it onto the map. Redeployed engines attempt to deploy wherever that arrow is pointing on the factory tile. If it's obstructed with a wall or another engine, as it is right now, then it would just move either to the right or the left, depending on wherever the direction pawn is. But we don't need to worry about that right now. That's it. That was the machine turn, and that's the end of round number 1. We start up round 2 the same way that we did before by secretly, quietly playing a card from our hand. And as you can see, our hand of cards don't reset. The only way to get new cards into your hand is by building your camps. If you were to run out of cards in your hand, you'd simply play the card that's on the top of your deck. So the order player is playing this one. Again, all communication has to cease. We can't talk about what we're playing. And now they can reveal. In this case, they each have ongoing abilities on their defenders, so we don't need to worry about revealed abilities. And it looks like the Coven has the first player token, so they get to go first. Their defender has evasion, which means that they ignore this side of the die when they take damage. That is great for right now. That means they can evade these snipers. So they're just going to move 1 over to here. For their second of their 3 actions, they're going to remove this pollution. That's going to earn them a support. And normally they would take fire from the snipers. But that side doesn't count for the snipers, and even if they had rolled this, because of their evasion, they won't take any damage. As you can see, the support has reached the next camp token. That means they have enough support in order to build their next camp. Now, it's important to note that even if they were to get more support at this point, they would just go to waste. There wouldn't be any space for it, so they really want to build a camp at this point. So you just take the next camp marker, place it down. Now the Coven can only build their camps in the marsh. Each faction has their preferred habitat, and your camps have to go into that habitat. Once you build a camp, your support resets back to 0, and you get to draw cards up to a hand size of the number that's shown. So right now our hand size is 4, so we get to draw back up to 4 cards. And this is the only way to get cards back into your hand. Now, once again, because of these snipers, we have to roll. Okay, we would have been a miss again, but with our evasion, we weren't worried. And there we go. That's our 3 actions, but now we have a new hand of cards. And ooh, we cannot team up. So none of these defenders match the habitat of the other defenders, so we can't team up. I think in order to avoid taking damage our next round, I think we will use our map to move to maybe down here. There we go. That's the Coven player's turn. The machines get to go. And now we have their third type of card, the Mechs card. So here it shows that each engine is going to deploy another mech. And they deploy the mech in the hex that they're facing, right? This little squiggly side is their front. They're facing that hex right there. And this one is facing that hex right there. Maybe I'll lay these down so they're a little easier to see. There we go. In fact, we can lay these guys down as well. So we deployed the mechs. Now we have the Hunters Pursue. So these mechs that are on the ground, they're going to try to pursue our organizers. The ones on top of the factories, the snipers, they're going to stay still. And as it shows on the card, the mechs are going to try to go after the active player by moving 2 habitats in order to get them. And in this case, this mech can reach. So it's going to move 2 habitats in order to attack the active player. If the mechs couldn't reach the active player, then they would move 1 habitat away to go after the other players. In this case, the order player is far enough away from the mechs, so they just won't move. And that's it. The mechs don't attack right now. They're going to attack if we fight them or if we try to move away from them. The order player has 3 actions. I think they're simply going to spend their first one to move here, their second one to clear that pollution, and they gain a support. And then for their third action, they're going to breach this wall right there. They simply take one of their tokens and place it next to that wall. Now that that wall is breached, players can move through it. And this is really going to be the only way that we're going to be able to get into this space once it becomes a factory. Now, breaching a wall also gives us a support. So now on their next turn, the order player will be able to play a camp here in the forest and get their hand of cards back. We go to the machine. And here we go. We have the second type of pollute card. It's similar to the first, but it has one extra little action on the top here. It says toggle machine direction. So when this card comes up, we simply move the machine direction from the right to the left. Now these engines, when they move, are going to be moving over to the left, which means they're actually not going to be making that into a factory like I thought they would. The next action is exactly like the last pollution card. If any players were on or adjacent to toxic sites, you take a damage. Nobody is. And now the factory is going to spread pollution. So one there, and one there. If either of these 2 spaces get another pollution, they'll become toxic sites. So we might want to go over there and deal with that. And that was round 2 done. We're on to round 3. Because the order player is out of cards in their hand, they simply have to play the top card that's on their deck, whether they want to or not. And the Coven player, because they got their camp out, they have some choice here. They're going to play that card. Everyone reveals. Looks like the order player gets to take the first player marker. And with Apothecary, both factions get the potion token. The potion, again, lets you heal all of your damage. And just to go over the items, the bread lets you take an extra action. And the rockets let you destroy a mech from an adjacent location. You get the +1 support, but then you have to roll for a ranged attack. So you only get injured on the single hit, not the double. Now we know exactly what the Order player wants to do for their first action. They want to build their camp. You reset your support. They're now going to draw up to a hand of 4 cards. They now have 3 more actions left, so I think what they're going to do is just move here. For their third action, they're going to remove this pollution, get a support, but take shots from those snipers. Okay, the 2 shot doesn't hit them. The snipers only hit on the 1. Then for their last action, they're just going to move back here. They ended their movement on their camp, so they're going to get that item, in this case that map, and then they're going to use their map right away to fling themselves way over there. But, ooh, we forgot. They moved from this spot to this spot, and they started their move near some snipers, so they have to take another shot. Ooh, and there we go. They got hit. They're done. We have mechs again. So the mechs are piling up. And now they're going to pursue. That one moves 2 over there. Now this hunter is within 2, but they will never move through walls. So none of these other mechs are within range. They would then look to pursue any other player that's adjacent, essentially, 1 hex away. Once again, too far away, and this one's already here, so it'll just stay there. So there we go. That was the machine's turn. Now the Coven player gets to go. They only get 2 actions. They're just going to attack that mech, first of all. Boom, mech goes away. Get a support. But, gotta roll the die. Oh, they take 2 damage. Now, as their second action, they could just heal and remove those 2 damage. But they also have this potion, so I think they'll just spend the potion as a free action to clear up that damage. And then for their second action, they'll clear this pollution, get another support. And again, they could team up if they wanted with this card right here, but they decide not to. They decide to hold on to their cards. So they're done. And now we draw the final card from the machine's deck. This is the second engines card. Now again, we look to see if any hex was fully enclosed. We haven't seen that. Then the engines advance 2 spaces, and because they've changed directions here, then instead of going this way, they're actually going to go to the left. So they're going to go 1, 2. Build 2 walls. And similarly, this one's going to go 1, 2. Build 2 walls like that. And none of the engines have reset, so there's nothing to deploy, so we're done. That's it. At this point, you would simply just shuffle up this deck, and we just keep going through just like that. Now, let's say that the machines hadn't changed directions, and so instead of building these 2 walls, they were still moving to the right when that engine card came up. Instead, this one would have gone 1, and it wouldn't be able to go any further. It's reached a dead end. So it would reset at that point. These 2 walls would come out. And then at the end of the card, it says to redeploy. It would want to redeploy here, but there's a wall there. So it would move to the next one. In this case, going to the right, because that's where the marker was. Can't go there. Here it's free, so it would redeploy like that. Now let's say in the future, it's the machine's turn, we draw the card, the engine card comes up. We have an enclosed habitat, so we have to build a factory there. The first thing you're going to do is remove these walls. You're going to keep this pollution marker. It's going to go onto the factory that you're building. And then you're going to move the factory over, maintaining its orientation. That's very important. You keep the breach token. So that wall is still breached, and these around here are assumed to have walls that you can't go through unless they're breached. You're then going to place 2 snipers back on top of the core. And now, before we can win the game, we have to come in here and rewild this factory. So maybe sometime in the future, we come back over here, we enter into there. Before we can rewild it, we have to get rid of all of this stuff that's on it. So we need to attack these mechs, get them out of there. We also got to take care of this pollution. Again, we had to enter through this breach, right? So if we hadn't breached, we'd have to breach the wall first. And only now would we be able to rewild this factory. We would simply spend an action, and we'd get to flip that tile over. Again, being careful to maintain the orientation. And now we have a beautifully rewild tile. This space now counts as a wild habitat. It could be used as any of the habitats, but it does still have walls on all of its sides except for the breached ones. Rewilding a factory does give you a support. And of course, in this instance, because we're next to these snipers, we'd have to roll for damage. Ah, there we go. We got the blank side. We didn't get any damage. And that's basically it. We're going to keep doing that, trying to gain support, putting out our camps, rewilding any factories that get built. And if we can manage to accomplish all of that before they build 7 factories, or there's 7 toxic sites out there, or they kill 2 of our defenders from the same home habitat, we'll win the game. And there you go. You now know how to play Defenders of the Wild. This is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter, so go check out the link in the description below for more information. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.